Welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. Coming up this week, exactly what power do you need to be a top pro cyclist? A new study which tracked 144 pro cyclists over the last 8 years has the answers, and as you can imagine, the numbers are out of this world. We'll also look back at the first round of the brand new UCI Track Champions League and the European Cyclocross Championships. First up though, just how much power do you need to be a pro cyclist? Well, we've got an answer for you. Well, we haven't, but research from 6 universities around Spain and South Africa have. They've been looking through 8 seasons of data from 144 professional cyclists and have come up with this table that outlines what power to weight ratios male pro cyclists can produce for various durations, ranging from 1 second to 4 hours. So on the left of that table, we have the durations, and along the top, the bottom 10 to the top 10% of professional cyclists. Now, if we break it down into the 4 key durations that generally are looked at when exploring the relative strengths and weaknesses of a cyclist, 5 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minute and 20 minute power outputs, and take a rider weight of 70 kilograms, then to be in the top 10% of the peloton, you need a 5-second power of 1,450 watts, a 1 minute power of around 800 watts, a 5-minute power of 535 watts, and a 20-minute power of 460 watts. That does simplify matters though, because in general, sprinters are of course heavier and climbers lighter. So those absolute powers will be slightly higher for the sprinter and slightly lower for the climber. This next table shows that disparity in weight, with the average male sprinter 80 kilograms and the average male climber just 63 kilograms. Now, what's also interesting in that table is the disparity in years of experience needed to be a top GC rider versus a top sprinter. 6 plus or minus 3 years for the sprinter, 9 plus or minus 5 years for the GC contender. Tadej Pogačar really is an anomaly amongst Grand Tour winners. Now let's look at an example of a top pro who sits in between sprinter and climber. Mathieu van der Poel, the anaerobic monster. So his weight is listed online as being 75 kilograms, and the top 10% of male pro cyclists are capable of 11.33 watts per kilo for a minute. That, for Van der Poel, equates to 850 watts, but since he's in the top 1% of pro cyclists, I'd imagine his peak 1 minute power would be in excess of 900 watts. So no wonder it's so hard to stick with him when he attacks. For pro female riders, the durations are from 5 seconds to 1 hour in the study, and the average weights across the different specialists is much more consistent than their male counterparts, with the average sprinter weighing in at 55.6 kilos and the average climber weight 50.7 kilos. Now, if you want to be in the top 10% of the women's pro peloton, you need a 5-second power of 17.2 watts per kilo, or 956 watts at that 55.6 kilos, a 1 minute power of 9.4 watts per kilo, a 5-minute power of 6.5 watts per kilo, and a 20-minute power of 5.5 watts per kilo. For a 50.7 kilogram rider, that is just under 280 watts. Now, there are 2 factors that I think we all need to consider when looking at these numbers. Firstly, they don't take into account the skill of the rider, their ability to position themselves in the bunch, to corner, to descend, to limit the amount of braking they do, or their ability to save energy until it really matters. So you will find a number of non-professional riders out there who are capable of hitting some of these top numbers, but the reason they might not be pro riders could be that they lack some of the other essential skills that you need to be successful in the pro peloton. The other factor is endurance. Yes, the data points for 4 hours do to a degree indicate endurance potential, but one of the amazing attributes that sets pro cyclists apart from good amateurs is their ability to produce close to their best short-term power outputs after 5 hours or even 3 weeks of racing. Julian Alaphilitte's brutal attacks after 6 hours flat-out racing at the World Championships, for example, or Wout van Aert's incredible time trial and sprint at the end of 3 weeks of racing at this year's Tour de France. This was something highlighted in some research done as part of the study, which compared World Tour team riders to pro team riders, effectively cycling's first and second divisions, at the 2020 Vuelta a España. What they noted was that the difference between those riders in their best power output was not significant in the first week, when everyone is fresh, but became very significant in the last week, particularly in efforts longer than 5 minutes. They also looked into repeatability of efforts and found that the higher the overall energy expenditure of a stage, the bigger the difference in the ability of a top-level rider to produce close to their best powers than someone in a second division team. And I guess the ultimate example of this key difference are track riders. Just look at the powers produced by sprinters at Saturday's Track Champions League. Would they make Cavendish, Bennett, Groenewegen and Wiebes et al. Look comparatively slow in a head-to-head 250-metre sprint? Yes, they would. Would they be able to produce anywhere near their maximum power at the end of a 5-hour road race? Not a chance. It's a bit like comparing a 100-metre sprinter to a marathon runner, only the key difference, I guess, with pro road cyclists is that they need to have both short and long-term power. You could have an incredible power output, for example, for 4 hours, but if you can't produce that short burst of power, you aren't going to win many races. Just before I move on, there might be a few of you who are wondering what the minimum power is that you would need to be a pro. So here they are. At 70 kilograms, a 5-second power of 1100 watts, a 1-minute power of 621 watts, a 5-minute power of 456 watts, and a 20-minute power of 383 watts. That would put you in the bottom 10% of World Tour riders, which might explain why my career didn't last very long. Now, for those of you that would like to see the study yourselves and pick apart all the research and conclusions and numbers, we'll leave a link in the description just below this video. On to actual racing now though, and the first round of the brand new UCI Track Champions League. A new format of racing and complete equality across the board between men and women, with the number of participants, events and prize money all equal. The way things should be done, effectively. This tweet from Benji Narson summed up the feeling around that first round in Mallorca, I felt. Having seen the UCI Track Champions League today, I can comfortably say this tournament will get me to become an avid fan of track cycling. And that really is the idea of it all. I'm sure there are a number of traditionalists out there who don't like the idea of change or a new concept, but the shorter nature of the events and the evening as a whole is designed to get new people interested in track cycling. If you haven't already watched it, make sure you do. The racing was electric, and so too was the opening introduction with the music and lights around the track, which I've got to say was very well done. Now I'll start with the sprint events. Last week on the show I mentioned that Emma Heinz and Leah Friedrich of Germany would be the women to beat, and so it proved to be. They finished 1-2 in that order in the sprint, with Heinz crossing the line at a whopping 73 km/h, and although Canada's Kelsey Mitchell won the Keirin, in finishing second, Heinz took a 2-point lead into round 2 ahead of Mitchell. Friedrich is a further 5 points back in third. In the men's, it also went to form. Harry Lavreysen has been on fire this year, and he carried that on by winning the sprint event from Russia's Mikhail Yakovlev. Stefan Botica of Germany got the better of Lavreysen in the Keirin, but the Dutchman leads the standings by 4 points going into round 2, with fellow Dutchman Jeffrey Hoogland in third. In the endurance events, Corbin Strong of New Zealand dominated. He won both the elimination and scratch races, giving him a perfect score of 40 so far in the series. The scratch race was particularly intense, with just 20 laps of the track. You don't want to do that without a decent warm-up. It means that Strong holds a 10-point advantage over Yuri Leitao of Portugal, with Gavin Hoover of the USA in third. In the women's, Katie Archbold of Great Britain won the elimination, beating Kirsten Wild, and Maggie Coles-Lister the scratch. The Canadian had attacked with Serak of Belarus and Balasita of Lithuania, and they just about managed to hold the bunch at bay by the finish line. It is Archbold, though, who tops the standings as they head to Lithuania in 3 weeks' time for round 2. On to the dirt now, and it was the European Cyclocross Championships this weekend, held around the Vanberg in the Netherlands, and it was a very successful weekend for the home nation. They didn't have it their own way in the junior races, which went to Zoe Bagstedt and Aaron Dox of Great Britain and Belgium respectively. Both were dominant, with Dox winning by 46 seconds and Bagstedt by over a minute. The other 4 titles all went to Dutch riders though. Ryan Kamp won the under-23 men's event by outsprinting a hugely disappointed Niels van der Putte and Thibaut Nys to the line. Belgians filled 4 of the top 5 places, but it was Kamp who took the top spot. The Dutch filled all 3 podium positions in the under-23 women's race, with Shirin van Anrooy beating Puk Pieterse and world champion Fem van Empel. Dutch women also had 4 of the top 5 spots in the women's elite race, and they did make the top step of the podium there. World champion Lucinda Brandt was in a league of her own, coming to the line almost a minute clear of the Hungarian Blanka Vas, with Yara Castelline having one of her best races of the season in third. In the men's, the pre-race favourite, given his form this year, was Eli Iserbyt. But he was way off his best and wouldn't even manage to break into the top 10 in the end. Out front, his Belgian teammate Quinten Hermans made a big attack midway through the race, but the experience of Lars van der Haar and his strength saw him claw his way back by the penultimate lap, immediately attacking Hermans and soloing to a popular win. And his first win, incidentally, for over 2 years. Van der Haar has been incredibly consistent at the top level of the sport for 9 years now, so it was great to see him back at the top of a podium in such a prestigious race.
Your way to ride today was planned before, or you played by heart?
It was a little bit planned, but not to be this far back. I wanted to be more in front. Like I said, I lost a little bit too much time with my bike change. But yeah, I had to try and play it smart against so many Belgians. I felt I was really good. But in the end, I did not know if I could get Quinten back. But I knew it was a long and hard race, so I had to keep trying.
Right, coming up this week on GCN Plus, it's a big one for cyclocross with 3 top-level races taking place. We've got the next round of the Super Prestige from Neil on Thursday, the Ethias Cross from Leuven on Saturday, and then the 6th round of the UCI World Cup from Tabor in the Czech Republic on Sunday. The Super Prestige and Ethias Cross races are available in all GCN Plus territories except for Belgium, whilst the World Cup is available throughout Europe except for Italy, Denmark, Norway, Sweden and Belgium. Talking of cyclocross, Mathieu van der Poel has said that he will be back to compete in that discipline in mid-December, the 18th to be precise, at the UCI World Cup in Rookman. Tom Pidcock will apparently start a couple of weeks earlier at the Super Prestige in Boom, and he's likely to do so on a brand new Pinarello cyclocross bike. This was the picture he uploaded of that bike to his Strava activity last Thursday. There's no news yet as to when Wout van Aert will make his season debut though. Back to the road, and the Giro d'Italia organisers RCS Sport last week announced details of the 2022 Grande Partenza. As was already known, the first 3 stages will take place in Hungary, but contrary to the original plan from 2020, we don't start with a time trial. Instead, we've got an uphill finish to the opening stage, 5Ks at 5% to Visegrad near the border with Slovakia. One for Peter Sagan then, if his new team gets invited. Stage 2 is an individual time trial of just under 10 kilometres, also with an uphill finish, and then Stage 3 looks to be the first opportunity for the sprinters with 201 kilometres over mainly flat terrain. The rest of the route will be revealed gradually over the next few days. RCS also ran the first Dubai Criterium race on Saturday with a number of Giro d'Italia stars on show, displaying their respective leaders' jerseys from May. And rather fittingly, in what was an exhibition race, it was the pink and Ciclamino jerseys who fought it out for the win. Peter Sagan, rather unsurprisingly, was able to get the better of Egan Bernal in the sprint to the line. Over in Mexico, Alex Dowsett made an attempt at breaking the world hour record. The distance to beat was 55.089 kilometres, set by Victor Campenaerts, and it was a mark the Brit would ultimately fall short of. His distance of 54.555 kilometres left him 536 metres shy of Campenaerts and 166 metres short of Dan Bigham's British record set recently at sea level. However, as Dowsett pointed out after the attempt, the biggest failure would have been not to try at all. Now, the hour record is not only physically and mentally incredibly tough, it's also the only sporting event I can think of where viewers tune in to watch one individual sportsperson, and that is a lot of pressure on your shoulders. And on top of that pressure, Dowsett also used his attempt to raise awareness of haemophilia and also to raise a significant amount of money for the Haemophilia Society. Almost £50,000 as we record this, so well done to you, Alex. Transfer news now, and Nina Kessler has signed with Team Bike Exchange for 2 years, making the same move as Kristen Faulkner over from Team Tibco Silicon Valley Bank, who in turn announced last week that they will apply for World Tour status next year with EF Education First as the main sponsor. Like Trek Segafredo and Bike Exchange, the team have committed to paying their full-time riders at least the same minimum salary as their male counterparts, which currently stands at €40,000. Along with EF Education Tibco Silicon Valley Bank, 4 other teams are applying for Women's World Tour status for 2022. And if they're all successful, that would make 14 teams at the very top level of the sport, which is brilliant news. And I'd like to make a special mention to Linda Jackson, who set that women's team up 17 years ago and whose passion and dedication to the project has helped countless women a chance to achieve their goals and also to get the team to where it will be in 2022. Well done, Linda. The sport will be nothing without people like you. Making a fairly surprising move away from EF Education Nippo is Lawson Craddock. He said that he's looking for a new challenge as moving to Team Bike Exchange, one of the few signings they've made on the men's side for next year. Daniele Bernati has been appointed as the new Italian national coach, a role he takes over from Davide Cassani. Now, Bernati was one of the most likeable pro cyclists of his generation, calm, kind and a real team player, all attributes that I'm sure will prove invaluable in his new role. The Belgian Louis Vervaeke is leaving Alpecin Fenix and headed to De Koning Quickstep next year. The Belgian finished 20th overall at this year's Giro d'Italia and will be a great lieutenant in the hills and mountains to the likes of Evenepoel and Alaphilippe. Team Cofidis have added 2 new riders to their 2022 roster, with Davide Villela along with yet another rider who's been forced to move on from Quebecer, Max Valscheid, the sprinter turned time trialist. Meanwhile, the rumours about Chad Hager joining Legion of LA turned out not to be true, although he is joining another US squad, Rally Cycling, as their 18th and final member for 2022. For the American, it's basically like going full circle, as he last rode for that same squad back in 2013 when it was known as Optum, presented by Kelly Benefit Strategies. The Rally women's team have been recruiting talent at the other end of their careers, Kai Schmidt and Michaela McPherson. Now, you may remember Schmidt from the Junior World Championships back in September, where she finished just behind Zoe Bagstedt, whilst McPherson finished 5th in that same race, whilst also taking the US National Junior title earlier this season. Right, that's all for today's show, but don't forget you can join us this evening for the penultimate round of the ZRL Premier Division, which is a team time trial. It kicks off at 7 p.m. GMT right here on GCN Racing's YouTube and Facebook channels. The men's race is first tonight and the women's is second. I hope to see you then, but for now, it's goodbye.